So let's get into the top 10 here a little bit. I put them in order from 10 to 1, with 1 being what I consider to be the most important. There's always room for discussion on the sequence, and I'm sure in some cases there's a few things I could probably put together a top 50 list, but we got to start somewhere. So we'll start with the top 10. 8 would be build a long-term plan. What we see on a regular basis is that organizations often build a plan to support the implementation of a CMMS. So very detailed on what we have to do, what we've got to do to get ready to hit the proverbial go live. And quite often they really don't have any type of implementation plan that goes much past the go live. Maybe it's got a month or two of some additional subject matter expert support, or somebody that can answer questions and that type of thing. But if you really think about what's going on when you put a complex system like a CMMS that has so many moving parts and so many components, if you don't have a long-term plan on how you're going to continue to improve this, use it, train the organization on additional functionality, additional components, you're really missing out, because in effect that go live is truly only the start of your system implementation. So don't focus so much just on the technical implementation. Don't get me wrong, you got to have a real strong plan to get there, but at the same time you need to have a long-term plan in place on how you're going to continue to improve the use of your CMMS system. So that includes things like master data development, a long-term data management strategy. So that includes making sure you've got very clear standards for how your data goes into the system, what the quality and the level of detail is expected for the data. And a simple example I'll give you there is, when you set up an equipment record, what are your expectations on the data that goes into a system for the equipment record? Do you expect to have specification information, proper classification, proper descriptions? Do you have the standards defined for all of those things? If you do, that's a great thing. How do you qualify and approve that data that goes into the system, or control of the quality of the information? Do you have a process out there for the management of new data that goes in? Whose responsibility is it? How do you make sure it's in a standard manner and in compliance with the corporate or organizational standards? How do you make sure that obsolete data gets out of your system? These are all things that go into a long-term plan and processes to support those plan pieces also. If you're talking about the implementation piece, you want to look at making sure you have resources out there to build and validate that foundational information. If you're not doing it prior to go live, definitely have a long-term plan to get that data in place and built and improved in a relatively short period of time after go live. Because if you don't have it, it never gets done. Of course, things like metrics and KPI management. What's your strategy for that? Who manages it? Not just simply what metrics do we want and what reports do we want. What are you going to do with that KPI information? How do you make sure that the data and the information you're putting into your CMMS system are truly supporting the metrics and the KPIs that you're going to be getting out of the system? Business process compliance measurement. What's your strategy and your plan for maintaining and evaluating that going forward? A lot of times we'll have organizations that maybe for the first few months they have people looking at that and then they forget it. Well, organizations change. New people come, new people go. We've seen a number of organizations that might have a very strong business process that they put in place, but it falls apart after a while because they don't have a long-term plan for making sure those processes are followed, and that as the organization, as people come in and out of the organization, that they have a way of making sure that they're brought into the proper business process structure, as opposed to being allowed to figure it out and maybe then starting to make that process deteriorate because people are now doing things the way that they think they should be done and not following the standard process. So make sure you've got a long-term plan there. New hire training. is another part of it. How do you bring new people on and make sure they understand all of this? You got to remember that, you know, you may have been at this for 2 or 3 years. As soon as you bring a new person into the organization, they're starting from scratch. You've got to have a way to bring them along and get them up to speed to the point of the, you know, the veterans that are used to using the system. You can't just kind of let them naturally try to figure it out. It doesn't work very well. So that gets to things like advanced system training. What are you going to be doing there? Don't think your training stops after go live or maybe after some introductory training. Put together training packages and information packages and for your advanced users. It's just as important. These systems all have some tremendous functionality, and the reason a lot of people are only using 40 or 50 or 60% of their system is because nobody's ever looked into, you know what, this functionality is in here. What does it do? How do we use it? What value might it create for us? So we want to have that advanced piece in there. That gets to upgrade management. Might be an obvious piece of this. You know, when do we upgrade? If we do upgrades, how do we roll these out, and how do we make sure we're taking advantage, again, of all the additional functionality that typically comes with an upgrade? I've seen a lot of upgrades go out, and basically the users on the other end are left to figure out, gee, what's different? What functionality do I have? And, oh, this is new. How do I use this? That's not really leveraging the capability of the systems. Last one is report development, management, and distribution. There is a long-term plan for that. When people first start using a system, everybody goes through, well, what reports do you need? And there's always an answer given to that. But I'll tell you what happens is that after about 6 months, the answer to that question is completely different than it was when they first went in, not knowing what the heck the system can actually give them. So you want to have a cyclical process to come back and revisit that and continue to enhance the reports, the views, the screens, the querying capability that's built into your system. So hopefully you found this interesting, some helpful points and comments, and if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.